What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Tucker Max. Tucker is the co-founder of Scribe Media, a company that helps people write, publish, and market their books. He's written 4 New York Times bestsellers, which have sold over 4.5 million copies worldwide. He's credited with being the originator of the literary genre fratire, and is only the third writer after Malcolm Gladwell and Michael Lewis to ever have 3 books on the New York Times Nonfiction bestseller list at one time. And in 2009, he was nominated to Time Magazine 100 Most Influential list. This conversation, it cannot come at a more perfect time. We are in the middle of having to shift our businesses and everything in our lives, including our personal and professional goals. And what Tucker talks about is being able to shift your life and being able to approach everything as it comes at you versus trying to have this massive plan set out in front of you for success, right? We have to react to the things that are happening in order to create massive success for ourselves. And Tucker is the perfect example of that. And in this episode, you're going to hear all about that, how he switched from being the fratire guy to a dad and loving husband and multi-millionaire who's running this massive organization. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you guys are too. Now, before we get into the episode, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Movement Live is still happening September 25 through 27, so do not miss that. It's going to be a game-changing event. gnmlive.com to grab your tickets now. Tickets are still selling even in the middle of a pandemic, and that makes me so grateful because it means I've built something that means a lot to you guys, so thank you so much. Also, just a reminder, I've launched the Purpose and Movement Mastermind with Mark Crandall. If you guys haven't signed up yet, tonight is the night. We actually have a call where we're bringing in Mike Kim to teach you guys copywriting and brand building. You cannot learn at a better time, and we're offering you 30 days free. So head over to purposeandmovement.com and sign up now. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Tucker Max. Tucker, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, dude, I've known about you for years, obviously. You've been in the space as an author at first, multiple-time New York Times bestseller, #1 a number of times, but have completely pivoted your life and everything that you're about. And I want to get into that a little bit, but obviously talk about more about how you're really helping so many entrepreneurs and thought leaders with teaching them how to do stuff. But why don't we take a second and talk about who's Tucker today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
So today, married, I have 3 kids, all under 6. Thank God I have a big house. Dude,
no kidding.
Dude, I have a 7,000 square foot house with a guest house and a pool. And still, it's not big enough. Not big enough. 3 kids under 6. And thank God my mother-in-law is quarantined with us. Like, there's all the jokes about mother-in-law. Like, I don't know where that shit comes from because I get along amazingly well with my mother-in-law. She's incredible. She is an angel sent from heaven because I might not have any kids if I'd been quarantined with them. Like, I love them, but they're very high energy. They're kids, right? And then, of course, they're in school and all that nonsense. And so she's able to work, like with her and my wife, we're able to handle it pretty easily. But yeah, so like all the normal dad stuff, like, it's what I do now. We just had Easter, hiding Easter eggs, all that stuff. Like, pretty normal.
I get it. So I don't have any kids, but my girlfriend has 2 kids, and we don't have a 7,000 square foot home. It's 2,500, but it's one of those like, okay, can we please go back to school? I don't care about this COVID-19. I really do. But
right. Well, no kids under 20 has died from it. So it's fine. Let them have it. Keep them. Who cares? Yeah. Give it to them all the time. I don't give a shit.
I need a breather. I just need a breather. Dude, I totally hear that. But like, it's crazy to hear you now talk about, being married and having kids because of where you came from, right? You were the anti-marry, anti-kids, party guy, all these things. Has your mother-in-law read your books?
Oh, yeah. No, she absolutely. My wife has not really. My mother-in-law has. She loves them. She thinks they're hilarious. No. Well, hold on. I was never anti-marriage or anti-kids. That's like saying, look, imagine if I told you, I'm like, remember when you used to play with G.I. Joes? You were all anti-job, and now here you are working. Like, wouldn't that be ridiculous as a thing to say? No, when you're in a certain phase, you do the things in that phase, right? So when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I did all the things like that I wanted to do in that phase. Drank, partied, hooked up. And it would have been a disaster if I had a wife and kids then. I've been cheating on my wife and not being a terrible dad to my kids. And now it's like, I used to start partying at 9. Now I go to bed at 9.
Yeah.
And then I would get home at 6 a.m. Now I wake up at 6 a.m. Like my life is inverted. And I like both lives. Like I had a lot of fun doing what I was, at least certain parts of it were super fun. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it was. And now it's like, oh God, it's so funny. When I was 29, the idea of like the life I had now was like, oh, kill me. I didn't say I never want that, but I just knew I didn't want that thing. Right. Now, like one of my favorite parts about coronavirus is like, oh, thank God I don't have to fucking tell people no about going to get drinks because I'm not going to do it. It's funny, like people are like, oh, come on, you're talking about. I'm like, listen, let me explain something to you. You're a great dude. I like you a lot, right? But I like my kids way more. So unless you can sell me that you're more important than my children, you're going to get that beer alone. I'm not coming. Right. And then most people are like, oh, okay, they get it. But there's always those few who are like all butthurt about it. I'm like, dude, sorry. Like, you got to, like, you're competing with my kids and you're going to lose every single time.
Every time. Dude, totally get it. And it's so funny that you said it. Like, oh, you're Tucker Max. You have to have a drink with me. It's a no-brainer. There's a guy over my shoulder right now. You see the shirtless man, Bert Kreischer, who's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
The comedian. He's another guy who's like, everywhere he goes, somebody wants to buy him a drink. His problem is he says yes all the time, and that's a whole different story.
That's why he's fat.
He's fat, and he's a stand-up comedian, and it's all part of the shtick, right? That's how he makes money.
Yeah.
You have really kind of transcended, and you started a company which used to be called Book in a Box, which is now called Scribe Media.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the format of you writing a book and the things that you wrote about, how does that transition for everybody as authors? Like, how do we reach that level of success, or how do we get the book in the right hands at the right time, if that makes sense?
Well, the first thing you have to do is let go of the idea of success that most people have for a book, right? They think of like, oh, success is what I did, or what Malcolm Gladwell did, or what Tim Ferriss did, or what. No. You've got to let that go. About us as authors, we're the ones that hit it big, and we also are professional writers. So everything we did was about selling lots of copies. For most people, selling copies is a cool bonus and a nice to have, but not the reason you're going to write the book, and probably not the main source. In fact, definitely not the main source of benefit, right? If you're an entrepreneur, the main source of benefit is going to be reputation. It's going to be business development. It's going to be sales in your business. It's going to be getting visibility in the media. It's going to be all those sorts of things. And ironically, the best way to do that is to do something that would be a disaster as a professional writer. And it is to write the most niche possible book, to find the smallest possible audience where you can dominate them in terms of, you can dominate the area category in terms of helping them. Mm-hmm. The smallest, that's a feasible, reachable audience, right? Almost always the smallest possible audience is better, which would be terrible if you're Malcolm Gladwell. If you write a book for like 10,000 people and you're Malcolm Gladwell, that's a massive disaster. But if you have a business where clients are worth 10 grand a year to you, and you write a book for those 10,000 people, you have just printed 8 figures.
Right. Yeah, which is incredible. And so when you talk about niching down, I think there's so many people in a space that don't even understand what that means, right? Like I'm in the podcast space, and people come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to do a podcast, and I talk about the whole, get rid of your expectations. We're not all Ed Milet. We're not all Lewis Howes. We're just not. But the reality is, like, if you niche down to the right market, you could write your ticket to success, right? Very, very similar kind of idea and thought process. But they come to me and they then go, yeah, I want to niche down to women.
Right, this is my favorite.
They don't quite get it.
Okay. Women 20 to 70 who are suffering. Shut the fuck up, man. What's wrong with you? Like, that's not a niche. A niche are plumbing supply companies on the East Coast or something, whatever. Like, I mean, that might be even too small. But like, I'll give you a really good example. This guy came to us Great dude. His name's Mike. And he's like, all right, I want to write a book on how small business owners can run their business. And we're like, okay, hold on a minute. That's a really big niche. And now small business owners as not that many people, let's say a couple million people, right? So that's a realistic niche as a number. But I'm like, how do you talk to someone who, like we said, someone who owns a plumbing supply company? How do you talk to that the same way they talk to you, right? How do you talk to Justin the same way as a guy who has a retail store and sells the plumbers?
Right.
There's no possible way, right? And so he was really resistant. He's like, no. And then eventually, like, he's like, well, how? Like, I feel like I'm supposed to reach the biggest audience, so it needs to be for small business owners. I'm like, no. And so finally, I'm like, okay, well, what do you do exactly? What's your business? And he's like, oh, I'm the guy for pizza parlors. Like if you want to start a pizza place, like, you come to me. I have the best pizza. Like, I have a whole chain of places in Oklahoma. They're like the best pizza places in the country. They're incredibly profitable and well run. Like, and now what I do is I consult and coach pizza parlor owners. And I'm looking at him like, why the hell do you want to write a small business book? And he's like, well, I thought I had to reach as many people as possible. It's like, no, fuck no. And he had it in his head. He had to be like Malcolm Gladwell to small business owners. It's like, no, you can be Malcolm Gladwell to people who own pizza parlors. And he's like, oh, yeah, that would be way easier. I was like, dude, bless his heart. And now the book's it's in publishing. It's not out yet. But it's an amazing book. It's incredible. And there's like two other people who are kind of the guys, quote, but they're clowns. They don't know what they're doing. They don't actually run pizza parlors. This guy's going to come out and crush them. He's going to be the Seth Godin for this space, and no one's going to be able to mess with him.
Yeah. So how do you walk somebody through that thought process? Because I know there's still people listening that are like, well, no, I want to sell a bunch.
It's got to be women, right? Yeah. Because what they say is, well, my book could help all these other people, right? I'll give you another good example. So this guy, Mike Mogul, he wrote a book called The GameChanging Attorney. That book has made him, I don't know, $5 or $10 million. He owns a video agency. They do videos for lawyers. So like commercials, online, anything video for law firms. That's it, right? It does pretty well. It's well into the 8 figures agency, like bigger than us even, like really good. Anyway, so looking at his book, you could absolutely, he almost did this. It is a really good book for any professional. It's a book it's called The GameChanging Attorney. It's how an attorney can use video to increase marketing, to help their market, double their practice, right? Or whatever it is. But like everything in there is applicable for any professional services firm, like doctors, dentists, orthodontists, anyone like that. It is all the exact same advice. Right. And so Michael really thought, now I need to make this for professional services. And like it got to the point where I almost we had to hit him in the head with a book. It's like, do you sell to dentists? No. So what happens if a dentist gets this book and they talk about a big dental convention, 50 dentists come to you? You're going to start that business? No. We can't. We're already struggling to scale our own business. Then why the hell do you want to talk to dentists? Right? He's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And then it was like, we even went further. It's like, what? Attorneys, right? He's like, yeah. They arrogant? He's like, oh, the worst. Like dealing with their arrogance is okay. So what attorney is going to think that a book for professional services applies to him because he's special and different? And law firms are completely unique and have nothing in common with dentists. He started laughing. He's like, oh, fuck, dude, you're totally right. He's like, they think that it's ridiculous. It's not true at all, right? And so it's really just about walking them through this, right? And the basic questions we really ask when we start with someone, what do you want your book to get you? Right? Not what do you want for your audience to have? That's an important question. But the first question is, what do you want your book to get you? Right? So for Mogul, the attorney guy, I want more attorney clients. Okay, cool. And then, better reputation in the space. I want to be the thought leader in the attorney space, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. Who's your audience? Attorneys with practices of 5 million and above. All right, great. Why are they going to care about your book? Oh, because I'm going to walk them through exactly how to double their practice in a year using video, this. Clear as day, right? So when you walk them through that, but then you just got to unpack all the arrogant, either the garbage they have in their head about what writers should do, even though they're not a professional writer, or the ego things about best-selling author, all that kind of stuff, and you get them back to, oh yeah, like either I can write a book that's about my ego, or I can write a book that's really going to help me with my objectives, but I can't do both.
Yeah, no, I love all that stuff. And it's true, because I think sometimes you have to work through somebody's blocks that they have in their head, or these ideas they've already created, to get to the point where they need to be. And I love that you do that in this space, because everybody's writing a book now, and they're all self-publishing, and they're doing this, everybody has it, right? So what are you doing as a company to help your clients kind of break through that noise once the book's written?
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy, because when we came into the space, there are a lot of people in the space, and I wake up every day and I thank God that my competitors are such clowns. Because no, seriously, dude, they are all low status, garbage people who are marketers only and don't know anything about books. So when we came into the space, we immediately occupied the premium brand, because no one was there. There was a ton of competition for how cheap and fast can you do it, and it looks terrible. In books, good, cheap, fast, pick two, right? You want good and fast, it's going to be really expensive. You want good and cheap, it's going to be slow, right? And you're going to have to manage the process, right? So like most people with us want good and fast. So it's going to be, actually, I should say, there's 4: good, cheap, fast, professional, right? And you can pick 2, sometimes 3. Professional is the big one. And so that's the thing that we focus on, is like our books, like here's my book, right? Scribe Method. Like you look at this, it looks beautiful. It's an amazing cover. Like you feel it's spot gloss. It's like, it's like pages, like this looks like a book that'd be on the front table in Barnes & Noble, right? Okay. So like if you want your book to look like it belongs in the pantheon of great books in like my library here, or this isn't a Zoom background, this is my actual library. Like if you want that,
second I thought it was. I was
like, no. This is like, I'm not fancy. I don't have a green screen. This is actually you can tell like with the shadows and everything. I do have lights here, but I don't have a green screen. But if you want your book to look like it belongs, then you have to pay for really good cover designers, really good interior. There's a million tiny little details that are super annoying, but you have to do, right? The marketers selling bullshit don't do any of that, because they're just trying to get money. They're trying to get, $5,000, $8,000, I'll make you a best-selling author. You'll be a hero. Everyone will love your book. You're going to go to fancy parties. No, it's not going to work like that. No, you're going to have a garbage book that you're embarrassed by, and then you're going to have to come work with us. That's how it works,
No, actually, I have a good friend and business partner of mine who was an Amazon bestseller, and he openly goes, I sold 46 copies. So that doesn't really mean anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. It just happens. And it's so true. Like, I don't understand the idea of doing something that doesn't look professional, like to not put in the time, the effort, and the money to get that done. And now the quick part is the interesting part, right? So how long did it take you to get Goggins book out?
Goggins was rough. Not because of him. He's great. Goggins, it's so funny. People come to us and like, how do I get a book, like a book cover as good as Goggins? You know what Goggins did? Goggins said, I trust you guys. Show me your best work. Like Goggins didn't argue with us and have all these dumbass ideas in his head. He was actually a dream client. Seriously, he was. He was amazing. Like one of the nicest guys too. I mean, I can see all the stuff about him is true, but just a genuinely nice dude. What was rough about it is it just took a lot of time. Right? Like his writer really worked on it for a long time. And then the cover is beautiful. And like our designer like really spent a lot of time. And so like all that kind of stuff, And so like like that book took, I'm not sure how long it took to write. Publishing was about 5 months. Cover, interior, the audio, because I don't know if you heard the audiobook, it's amazing. We had his writer. Okay, so here's why it's amazing. So, and you're a podcaster, you'll love this, right? Okay. So, most audiobooks are dry and boring. Some voice actor reads them, whatever. They're fine. David didn't want that. The problem is David's pretty dyslexic, so he can't really read well. He sounds stilted, right? Yeah. So this was his idea too. I wish I could take credit, but it's truly his idea. He's like, what if I had my writer read the book. And then he interviews me at the end of every chapter, like a little mini podcast episode. And I said, all right, it's a pretty good idea, David, but that's going to be a huge pain in the ass. It's going to cost more money. Here's all the logistical problems. And we went back and forth, and he's like, all right, I'll spend the money. I'm like, all right, cool. David had no problem spending the money for quality. He was always willing to spend money for quality. And so we tested it, and it cost 2.5 times as much as a normal audiobook. So it was into the low five figures. But it was amazing. And it's like why he sold 1 million audiobooks, because at the end of every chapter, you have this nasally guy, Adam's Jewish. You have this nasally New York Jewish guy reading this book, right? And then you hear David, and David's not reading, so it's how vibrant he is on interviewing, and it's so he comes alive, and it brings another layer to the audiobook. It just worked so well, but that took time. It took a lot of time, and time costs money with professionals, and David was willing to spend.
Yeah, and that's huge, and it's so true, and I love the fact that you shared all that stuff, because it's interesting to hear when somebody goes, well, how do I, things that I lack in, how do I still make it work, right? And he's made, obviously, much more than 5 figures on that audiobook in itself, so it doesn't, his
ROI is insane on that audiobook. It's off the charts. Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine. One thing I love about you, though, man, and everything that you've built out, you've had success in so many different arenas and have really kind of shifted how the world views you, right? Like a lot of people would end up getting stuck in what you created before. And what you've done is completely flipped it. And now I'm trying to word this the right way. Now you're at the same table with these other individuals that are obviously massive successes in business like yourself, and respected and reached out to be like the go-to person on certain things. How did you do that? How did you not get stuck in this is who I was?
That is a great question, because a lot of people do, right? I wish I could tell you there was a plan I had. That's not true. That's absolutely wrong. I don't know many people who have decade-long plans that they can implement. Jeff Bezos did at Amazon. Give him credit where credit's due. Tim Ferriss had one. Tim's a good friend of mine. I knew his plan in 2007, and I'm like, that's a dumb plan. It's not going to work. It worked. Right? It worked. Certain parts of his plan, certain parts, I'm like, oh, you're going to. I knew 4-Hour Workweek was going to be a huge hit. I know, whatever. But anyway, so the big thing for me, man. The big thing that I have that has led me to be able to change and shift so much is that I am always willing to face my truth, right? I may not always know it. In fact, most of the time I don't. But once it's in front of me, I'm always willing to accept it and face it and deal with it, right? So when it came time to hire a real CEO for the company, or hire someone to run the company, and the guy that we met, it became clear he needed to be CEO, and he was just it wasn't even close, right? I had to step aside, right? But that was one of those things where it's I had to. Once I saw it, the question was simple for me: is the company about the mission, which is to help everyone on earth write a book, or is it about me? And as soon as I framed it that way, it's okay, it's about the mission, and it really is. I'm going to step aside, right? And so, all the changes I've made in my life, all my willingness to do deep emotional work in therapy is because two things. One, at my core, I'm willing to put in the work to get better. And everyone says they want to get better, right? Most people aren't willing to put in the work. Like Ronnie Coleman said, everyone wants to be swole. No one wants to lift no heavy weights, right? Yeah. Most people aren't willing to put in the work. And I am, number one. And number two, I'm willing to face my truth, right? And most people aren't. Most people's entire lives are elaborate constructions to hide from some uncomfortable emotion or truth at the core. I'm not saying I don't have a lot of truths I still need to face. But I have chipped away and gotten rid of a lot too. And because I'm willing to do that. And I just think most people are not.
Yeah, no, that's huge, man. And obviously we all have a ton of that, right? Whether it's stuff that happened to us when we were kids or things that we've experienced in our younger years, or even today, we're facing things now that we're going to have to fight through in the future. Right. So what has been some of your big things where you're like aha moments of overcoming things that you're like, shit, I need to get rid of that so I can move on to the next thing?
All right. So I'll give you some recent ones, man. So the last year and a half for me, plant medicine, I've gotten into plant medicine therapies. So MDMA, I started with MDMA assisted psychotherapy. And I mean, dude, if you really want to do some serious emotional work, that shit does not fuck around. And the funny thing with MDMA is it's really gentle and it's really friendly and it's really soft. But like, you are going to face some shit if you are willing to. Like, it doesn't force it on you. Like LSD, I've done LSD assisted psychotherapy too. You do LSD, and LSD is like, all right, I'm going to rip the veil down and shove reality in your fucking face. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it, and you're going to eat it. Like, so I wouldn't recommend LSD therapy for people who aren't ready. But MDMA is very soft and friendly, but man, all the emotions you're stuffing down, all the emotions you're hiding, all the emotions you're pushing away, they're going to come up. And then you're going to be terrified. All right. Like, when I say you, I mean me. This is all my experience. You can Google Tucker Max MDMA. I wrote a whole thing about this. You're going to be terrified, and it's going to feel awful when you're feeling this because these are things you've pushed away. But then you feel it, and then you can let it go, and it's like you just dropped an 80-pound backpack of shame or fear or whatever it is, right? And so, like, let me think of some really good examples. All right, we can get real deep with this one because this is something I just went through. So I'm still kind of going through. So, my wife, most people, and I don't mean this in a bad way because it's true for me, it's true for everybody. Most people, whoever you pick, all of your relationships are like this, but it's really true with partners. And I mean like romantic partners, right?
Sure.
You find someone who is either the exact opposite of your parent or opposite sex parent or just like them. And whatever issues you had with your parent, you work out on them, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you, I won't put my wife's stuff out there. I'll put mine. It's really, really, my mom was gone all the time. My parents were divorced, so my dad was never there. And my mom was a flight attendant, so she was gone a lot. Yeah. And so, I learned at a very early age to be completely self-reliant and to not, and I don't just mean like cooking dinner for myself. I'm talking about emotionally self-reliant, which is breathtakingly abusive for like a 7-year-old. But I was, I had to be, which served me in a lot of ways in life. But it slowed my development in other ways, especially like if I want to be really close to your wife, you need to be vulnerable and trusting. And like there's a level at which I'm very vulnerable, but another level where I don't let her in, right? And I realized over the past few months that I wasn't letting her in like I don't share hardly any of what I do with her, like at my work, like or my writing or whatever, right? Because like I'm really good at it. And I realized, man, one of the reasons I don't share, part of it is just in like I'm so used to doing my own thing, but that's not really why. It's because like I used to try and share stuff a lot with my mom, and she either didn't care or was like cursory, like, oh yeah, that's great, honey, and just go back to drinking her wine or whatever, right? And so like when I would share, like just the act of sharing with my wife is hard enough. But then deep down, what I really wanted is I wanted her to come to me and ask about it and pry it out of me, because that's the thing I always wanted from my mom. And then I would get, I used to get mad. I kind of got, every now and then I get mad at her because she didn't care about what I was doing. But then I realized, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't ever take anything to her. I don't share it with her. And then even when she tries, she'll ask like a reasonable amount. And I'm like a stone wall because I want her to crack it out of me because that's what I wanted from my mom. And I'm like, I'm asking my wife to be my fucking mom. Like, this is bullshit on my end. Right. She had her own thing. She was doing the same thing to me about a different thing, right? But like that's a really good example of like, oh, like you want to talk about a turd that's hard to eat. Like, oh, I'm trying to get my wife to act like my mom. What my mom didn't do, right? Of course, it's all deeply unconscious and all that. Like it was actually on an LSD therapy session where I saw that. Clearly, I saw the dynamics and I was like, fuck, oh, dude, it was physically painful, man. And then I had to feel all that shit, all the stuff of my mom, the shame, the about mom didn't care, and the pain about that, and the loneliness. And then it's like, oh, I can let this shit go. And now it's like everything's not just perfectly solved, but it's way easier for me to share stuff with my wife now because I'm not putting all this burden on her that isn't hers to carry. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, dude, it totally makes sense. Like, obviously completely different circumstances, but I've been there, right? I've been where I've had to work through so much trauma created by my parents and their decisions, and I brought that into my relationships. But it was things in my life that I was like, well, this is why I am who I am. This is why I'm successful. This is why I'm doing this in this career, and so on and so forth. And I was like, fuck, but it's ruining everything else in my life. So you have to face it, and there is that balance of it's beneficial and it's painful, right? And it's hurting things. And so how do you kind of walk that balance, right? And like, I love that thought process of like, if you address it, you still have the lessons learned, but you're not damaging all the things around you.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love, man. So thank you so much for sharing that, which is absolutely incredible. So obviously now we're in this epidemic, this pandemic, whatever they're calling it, of coronavirus, COVID-19, and everything's shifting in this world. And we talked a little bit before I hit record, and you were like, oh shit, I thought you were recording anyway.
I know, that was gold I was dropping. I'm like, how are you wasting my good stuff here?
My friends get so mad at me because I talk about like the conversations I had before and after. They're like, you got to put this on the show. I'm like, maybe certain things are just for me. I don't know. But you know, we talk about this and the shifts in the world, and how do people need to change their approach at certain things. And you're putting something out which is really exciting for so many people who have something to say, who want to write that book, who want to get it into a market in a different way, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, and what made you decide to put this out there in the manner that you have.
So, all right. So what we did is it's called Scribe Book School. So just go to scribebookschool.com. And what we did is we took our entire process, like to work with us starts about 10 grand and goes up to 100,000 plus. And, we work Goggins and Tiffany Haddish and all these huge people. And we basically have a very clear, defined process to get their book positioned, get, structured, outlined, get all the content out of them and get it into a book in their words and their voice, right? It's a really good process. And we get paid a lot of money for it. And so we decided, the pandemic hit. And of course, our sales tanked because we sell luxury goods, and in a pandemic, no one needs a luxury good. And so seriously, our sales went down about 50%.
Wow.
And so, right. And we just hired a bunch of people to scale. Now, thank God we had a ton of cash. So we should make it through this. Okay. But it definitely was a kick in the teeth. So we had people, the good thing is we have people with time. And we've always been, information's free. We're a service company. And I truly believe that this sort of, not all information should be free. I get some stuff has to charge, but how to write a book, it's almost like a rite of passage for a human, I feel like, is to tell your story. And in our culture, writing a book and telling your story are deeply intertwined. And so I've always thought that should be free. I've always hated marketers who sell courses about that. And the main reason I hate them is not even because they're selling the course. It's because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. All these people who are just marketers, people need to write a book, know how to write a book, so I'll make a course on it. You don't know how to write a book. You're an idiot marketer. Go do Facebook ad courses. So we wrote the definitive book on how to write a nonfiction book. Scribe Media. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, an actual bestseller. It's 500 pages, our whole process. And so we decided, fuck it, let's just get online and teach the whole thing live. And take our exact templates that we use with our clients, right? Let's take them, make the templates, post those, make those free, and then walk everyone through every part of it and teach the whole thing. We have workshops. The authors pay to come to the workshop, and then they get editing and publishing with it. It's a whole package. So let's teach exactly what we teach, just the workshop. Obviously, the editing and publishing, you got to pay for services always.
Of course, yeah. But
the info, we can teach that. And so we had 5,000 people on the first webinar, the first day. It was a 5-day thing. And we had a lot of people on. And, dude, it was amazing. I mean, we had all these people who were just ecstatic and incredible. And they were so grateful. And all these people are writing books now. And then end up helping us a lot, too, as always, right? This is not like I can't believe. But we've done well into the 6 figures of revenue off of this. People who they were thinking about working with us. There were a lot of high-level people. Part of me thought, it's only going to be people who can't afford our service. I'm totally wrong. There were a huge number of people who had tons of money for whatever reason. They wanted to do it this way. And they're like, man, I had no idea how good your service was. I didn't understand or whatever. And so we signed all kinds of people off of that. And then we built new services because we had all these people who were like, hey, listen, 10 grand's too much. Can you have a coaching program that's less? And we're like, yeah, of course. Like I kept, because I promised, I said, I promise you I'm not going to sell you on this at any point. And I didn't because I'm like, guys, it was an easy promise. I don't have anything to sell you, right, for this. And so I'm like, I said, put in the chat multiple times, put in the chats what you want. And we'll see if we can put something together. And so what everyone asked for is an extended coaching program. And so we created 2 tiers, like 1,500 and 6,000. And man, we sold like 45, 50 of them this week, right? I mean, it was great. And we didn't even, we did such a bad job. We didn't have the webinar ready at the end. The webinar was 2 weeks after. It was like we screwed everything. And the webinar was garbage because like we were all awkward about selling because we don't sell like this. It was a C+ across. The content was A+. The sales was C+, and we still sold well into the 6 figures on it. And it was like, and plus the new product, we filled the whole class of it. And so it's going to end up being all kinds of cool stuff with us, you know, like this. You're going to see this. We're not the only ones. There's a huge number of people. Everyone who's turning into this and being like, I'm going to double down on the things I do that help people is ending up pretty good. And the ones who are like, oh, how do I squeeze more money out of my customers? They're not going to end up so well.
Yeah, man. And I've always been a big proponent of give first. And you'll hear me say to you, and it's so weird that I say this now to people up front, but you'll hear me say to you at the end of this conversation, genuinely say, hey, let me know how I can help you with anything. And I say that genuinely. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken my whole entire life, which is why I've been able to build my business and build the friendships that I have and my mentors and all that stuff. But the reality is, like, it always comes back tenfold. And I don't do it through selling. It just happens. Like, if you give, you will receive. And that's just the reality. And that's the approach we need to take, especially now, because we don't know what financial situation somebody's in. We don't. And there's not one person that say we can't. I have a really good friend who's losing $5 million a week right now in his business. $5 million a week. He's in the restaurant business, but it's just absolutely crazy. And you go, okay, well, he's obviously somebody who has a lot of money, but he's not making it right now. So you can't ever try and sell him something right now.
No.
And so that's just the reality of the world. And I love that approach, man. So one thing I like about you is everything you do, because at least in face value, what everybody sees becomes a success, right? However you want to define success. And so my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah, my definition of success is very simple. My time spent my way. I can't even conceive of another definition of success. My time spent my way. And I would say then the question would be, well, what's your way? I've figured out the only 2 things that matter in life are the relationships I have with the people I love and the work I do that matters to them. And the rest of the world, I guess. The work I do that matters to people. That's it. Everything else is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like, everything else is nonsense, right? And so I very consciously try everything I can to organize my life so that I am only spending time with the people I love or on the work I do that matters to them or to the world. And I said, now I don't mean to the world generally. I mean to actual people. Because so we say, oh, I'm going to go save the world. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Raise awareness. Shut up. That's not doing anything, right? Like, tell me exactly what you do that makes someone else's life better. Then we can talk about changing the world. Although my answer is always like, well, change yourself first. And so like, that's why if you look in our office, we have 2 counters, right? One of them is number of books published. The other counter is number of Amazon and Audible reviews, right? So number of books published is impact on our authors. Reviews are impact that the authors make, right? And so like those are the 2 numbers that we have in our like little, like a big conference room, whatever, workshop space. Those are the numbers. Yeah. Of course we have a P&L. Our bank money matters. I like money. I'm with you. But those are the ways we actually measure ourselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. Now, do you have any daily routines that you do to make sure you're ensuring that success across the board?
So what do you mean by like daily? Like I have tons of routines, but like, I wish share screen. Let's talk about my calendar, because the way I organize my calendar, right, is like, okay, so I learned this from, I forget if I learned it from Schwarzenegger or Andreessen, but I think they both do this, is that they have basically completely open calendars, or they try to, right? Huge blocks of uninterrupted time where they can just work on the things they want to work on. Right. So it's like Paul Graham wrote a piece about this called maker versus manager schedule. So if you are a manager, like if you're running a company, you kind of have to have a manager schedule, which is tons of little blocks of time, meetings, calls, things like that. But if you're a maker like I am, I can't, that's ruins my day. And I can't, you don't own your day, which if you're a leader of a company, you don't own your day. Your job is, the way you serve people is by doing those tons of little things and being reactive or whatever. Right. I need time alone to think and work on projects. So that's what I do. That's what my calendar is. 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. is writing time, blocked off. You can't get on my calendar, right? Noon is self-care. Like I work out, I whatever, lunch, go to spa, whatever, right? 12 to 1:30. Then 1:30 to 3 is like generally company work, usually admin, whatever. And then after 3, I have calls or whatever. Right. So like I set up my schedule, and of course there's some exceptions every now and then, blah, blah, blah. But like I've set up my schedule for success, for my success, to create my life. By the way, like I'm done at 4:30 every day. Sometimes like today I'm going to be done at 5 because your podcast is fine. Not a big deal. But like I'm done at 4:30 because 4:30 to 7:30 is family, right? With my kids, I put them to bed. I get up at 6. I don't start work till 8 or 8:30 because my kids get up around 6:30. They go to school around 8:30. So for those 2 hours, I'm with them and my wife and whatever. So that's like 5 hours a day I'm with my kids, which is really more than enough, quite frankly. And then the kids go to bed, and then my wife and I have like 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours to ourselves, right? So like, and then I'm not, sometimes we'll decide, oh yeah, we're both going to do work and whatever, because it's not like we're holding hands, crying conversations every night. But we have the space for it whenever we need it, So the big thing I do is set my calendar to create that life that I want, and then make sure everything around it serves that,
Yeah, I love that, and that's so true. Like I started my own business so I can own my calendar, so I can do what I need to do at any given time without being interrupted and the distractions and people needing my time. Like I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So I love that as well. So let's get to the important stuff, man. How do people sign up for this next wave of coaching that you guys are doing?
Scribebookschool.com. We have our next live training is April 28, 29, I think. It's on the thing. Go to scribebookschool.com. It's a whole sales page. It's great. And then it's funny. It's like 100% money back guarantee because it's free, right? So it's totally free to go to the live training. And here's the thing. We recorded the live training and we made a whole course about it. The course is also free. So as soon as you sign up, you get access to the course page. You don't have to wait for the live training. You can start writing your book right now. And then, of course, we have upsells to other coaching programs and all that kind of stuff. You can go into those. You don't need to. There's no information in those. It's all accountability. It's time. It's things like that.
Yeah, love that, man. So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single interview with this question, and that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Single moment?
Yeah.
I mean, my instinct, the moment that triggered the most growth, or the moment of growth? Because it's not exactly the same thing.
Well, what do you feel is more powerful?
I don't know. Probably the trigger. So it was when my movie failed. Like when I realized there's a movie made about my life, which is like, yes, I get it. It's the most rich white person problem ever. There was a Hollywood movie made about my life with big time actors, and it didn't do 100 million at the box office, and it was soul crushing to me, which is on one hand preposterous, but on the other hand completely true. And when that happened, that really, like I said, I always face my shit. That cracked my grandiosity, and that created a whole chain of events in my life that have led to exactly where I am now. If that movie had succeeded, I would have been one of those dudes that froze in place, and never would have. No one ever would have been able to tell me anything again. I never would have learned anything again. I would have been convinced that I was amazing and I was. You know how you can tell when a man's life peaked, an older man, because his wardrobe is frozen at that moment, right?
Yep.
Like mine would have been frozen at 2009 had that movie not failed.
I love that, man. That's incredible, and it's so true, by the way. So, Tucker, man, this conversation's been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and open, and also just giving this gift that's needed, and being open about the fact that, hey, look, there are things that we may try and sell you, but you don't have to go there, right? We're giving you all.
It's just coaching. The information is all free. Every piece of there is no new information anywhere else. Yep, you're just buying time and accountability and that stuff from us, expertise.
I love it, man. So, guys, make sure you check that out. It's obviously game-changing. This guy knows how to write a book. So if you're willing and ready to write a book, go check it out. It's completely free. Tucker, again, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.